Okay, game number 2. Hikaru with the white pieces. Gravity chess with black. D4, bishop g5, the Trompowsky. Again, try to anticipate the moves if you can. Or try to understand at least why certain moves are being played. It's really fast. It's going to force you to think fast as well. So queen takes f6 is what I assume will be played. Pawn d6. Hikaru gets a strong pawn on d6. It also could be very weak in the future. a4 would stop b5 here. Maybe g3. a4. Hikaru goes e4. This allows pawn to b5. Grabbing space on the queen side. Pawn to e5. Okay, you could do bishop f3. Very interesting setup. Black's dark squared bishop is hampered in. Something looks like it went wrong in the opening already for black. He takes the queen. And Hikaru picks up this important c5 pawn. So black's pawns are a little bit ruined, but he does have a lot of pawns. He can play bishop g7 here, attacking b2. I don't think it's completely lost just yet, but definitely white has actually looking at it further, a very nice advantage with the knight on c5, holding on to this a6 pawn, just keeping pressure on it. Pawn c3. Then pawn b4, maybe. Yeah, pawn b4 anyways. Okay, the pawn on a6 falls. But Hikaru, I'm guessing, wants to stop a lot of counterplay here. So a move that might be coming to mind is maybe even, I don't want to do it, but rook c1. Probably not. Okay, he doesn't do it. He goes bishop g2. And what's the point? Okay, black got some activity with this. His bishop is open up now. Knight is hit. The a6 pawn's less vulnerable. It's king to e7. King e7, knight b7. Maybe, yeah. King e7, knight b7. You have pawn d8 push. Okay, take the rook. Carves up material. And in this case, black doesn't have that many pawns to overwhelm white's position, whereas the last game, it really was about the number of pawns for the sacrificed material. So pawn c5 seems very natural here. But then rook h4 going after the h6 pawn. This looks over already for black. Maybe pawn c5 anyways. And if the rook goes to h4, then black will take on d7. Okay, now rook to c1, rook to b1, rook to b6, hitting a6 and c6. And this is a cleanup time for Hikaru, just going after the pawns, not allowing any counterplay. And black just resigns in this position. All right, let's head over to our game analysis. Game number 2, Hikaru with white. He plays d4 and bishop g5. The Trompowsky opening, pawn c5, pawn d5, pawn e6, breaking up white's pawn center, knight to c3, and h6. h6 does give white a slight advantage to the opening. After queen takes, Hikaru plays d6. And d6 is actually a huge mistake here. And the pawn is lost after queen to f4, hitting the d6 pawn. If knight to b5, then we have queen b4 check. The double attack on the knight, and king, so the knight has to come back, and the queen can take on b2. Knight again is hit. Best move is knight to e4 and queen to e5. Hikaru is just down a pawn here. So interesting that he went for d6 here, which is a mistake, and his opponent immediately played a6, not taking advantage, maybe getting spooked by some potential knight b5, knight c7 move. Queen to f4, kind of an unnatural move to make in the opening, but it goes right after this weak pawn on d6, and it was critical for black to do this immediately. Also a tough move to find, queen to f4, moving forwards in the opening with the queen. Generally feels a bit dangerous, and not a typical move you'd see all the time. a6, black does still have the advantage after queen f4, but doesn't find it. He plays b5, knight f3, bishop b7, e5, takes, and pawn takes f6. I kind of was anticipating queen takes f3, but in this case, black does not take on f3. Black takes on e5 with check, and the pawns are collapsing. Oh, sorry, the queen is hitting the rook on c8, so first knight c6. So Hikaru correctly takes the queen here, and after takes on d1, rook takes d1, pawn takes on f6, knight to e4. I was very surprised that black didn't keep this healthy pawn chain on the queen side. He saved his f6 pawn, but I thought he was going to play pawn c4 here, and instead he plays pawn to f5, choosing to save this pawn, which is okay as well. Knight takes on c5, and black is fine here. Positions roughly equal. Pawn g3. The bishop coming to g7 puts a lot of pressure on these pawns on the queen side. Bishop g7, pawn c3, pawn b4, bishop g2, takes, bishop takes. Also, very nice move by Hikaru, the only move to keep a slight edge for white now. And the reason for this is white's pass d-pawn is his saving grace. It's able to push to d7, followed by knight to b8, knight to b7, and covers the d8 queening square. Pawn takes, bishop takes, king e2, and bishop to b4 loses to d7 check. So in this position, after bishop takes e3, black had to go pawn to e5, and if d7, king to e7, knight to b7, you have this very strong move, bishop d4, and you block the d file. The bishop is an extremely strong piece. The pawn can come to c3, and black is just fine here. He also maybe could have played rook to b8. It does give away the a6 pawn, but it stops the knight from getting to this b7 square. And white has rook to b1 here, challenging the b file. So after bishop b4, d7, Hikaru finds the best move, king e7, knight to b7, and he's up material. Also, the bishop isn't as stable on b4 as it would be in the center of the board on d4. Rook to d4, rook to b1, rook to b6, and black simply resigns this game. Okay, conclusions. Let's go to our analysis. Game number 2. Hikaru versus Gravity Chess. As white, Hikaru plays the Trompowsky. Main reason for win, Hikaru found a nice sequence of bishop takes followed by d7 and knight to b7. main reason for loss, Black had the opportunity to get a sizable advantage out of the opening and missed this opportunity. Just quite interesting. It was that Queen F4 move. In addition, missed this threat of knight to b7, and also missed solidifying the bishop on the d4 square. Okay, note, I was surprised Hikaru got a bad position out of the opening, and d6 was a mistake. So it's possible Hikaru can get a worse position out of the opening and still come back and win. And this goes to show that in your games, if you're getting a worse position of the opening, you should continue to try and find a way to win, not just resign yourself to the fact that, okay, you get a worse position, the game is over. As we see, you could still beat a very strong opponent from a worse position. All right, let's take a look at the last game for today.